Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm excited to be here again with you this week. This is my final podcast episode specifically about the Enneagram for now. Don't you worry. I'm sure I'll be back, but we've been doing a really long, I think like 2-month series on the Enneagram in here, all part of the Ennea extravaganza that's culminating in my mini retreat that is happening on the 26th here in Denver. And at the time of this recording, there's only one spot left, believe it or not. So if you've been on the fence thinking about coming, I can't even guarantee that there's still a spot left, but it's now is your time. This is your sign to go to bit.ly/living Enneagram and snag that last spot for yourself. And if you try to do that a little bit too late and all of the spots are full, don't worry. I think technology is not my strong suit, but I'm pretty sure I have it set up so that when the retreat gets full, we are starting to create a wait list. And as soon as I get at least 5 people on that wait list, I'm going to schedule a second gathering. So go to bit.ly/living Enneagram. If all of this Ennea talk that we've been having over the last couple of weeks has been interesting to you and you're ready to get some of that Ennea goodness in your life. And if you don't live near here or you're not available on the 26th, that is totally okay. You always can talk to me about your Enneagram type, figure out what your type is, go deeper with it, all of that great stuff just by setting up a discovery call with me and going from there. So you always, always, always have Enneagram work available to you. And this week on the podcast, I am so excited. Last week, I was lucky to have my daughter, Gigi, participate, and not many 16-year-olds would probably donate their time the way Gigi did, but she was awesome. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And this week, I'm lucky again because I have my husband, Mike, on the podcast. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I am super pumped today to talk about how the Enneagram helps us in relationships, how we have used the Enneagram in our marriage. And you'll also get to learn a little bit about Mike's type, which is the type 2, and kind of how ones and twos work together because I'm a 1 and all of that great stuff. But it is called Confessions of a Parent Coach. So I better confess something right now. And my confession for you this week is I am not an easy person to be married to. And I think Mike would probably agree with me on that in many ways. And just last week, Mike and I had a mega blowout fight that I will not share all of the gory details of, but I will say that the way I showed up in that fight was probably not my best because getting criticized or anything that I perceive as criticism is like my deepest, most horrible fear in life. And it really sends me into the stratosphere, and my regulation abilities are absolutely non-existent at that time, which is exactly what happened. And I wind up becoming a real bear to fight with. So this is my public quadruple time of apologizing to Mike for how our fight went down this week. And yeah, my public confession about, just not being an easy person to be married to sometimes. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's pretty true. But in your defense, I didn't show up great to that fight either. So we were both having our issues that we were bringing into that fight. So I don't want you to take all the blame for that. But you were more wrong than me. That's all I have to say about that.
We're both wrong, but you were wronger.
As long as we're going to be on public record, we might as well establish that right now.
Yeah, babe, before we keep going, I want to maybe get your face closer to your microphone. I'm anticipating my editor giving me a hard time on the other end. So
Sure.
try to be as loud as I am, if that's humanly possible.
Will do.
It's a tall order. So let's start off by just exploring what it means to be a type two. Like tell listeners, maybe people have never even heard of the Enneagram or what and a two is. What does it feel like from your end? How does it to be a two?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. There's some gifts that I feel like I have, and at the same time, I have a lot of difficulties being a two. The gifts I look at it is like I love to help people. I love to have deep connection. It could be a stranger, it could be a loved one, it could be anybody in between. But you know, my path in this universe, my journey takes me, and the foundation is just connection with other people. And I love helping people. I show that's how I show up.
Yeah, I would say the two is called the helper, and it is fascinating watching Mike spring into action. I'll say when I observe Mike when he's like in his prime, it's just his ability to tune in to what's going on around him and you just have like an empathy at the like highest level. I would say twos are definitely the empath of the Enneagram, not that all the other eight types are devoid of empathy by any means, but I really appreciate what you said about the double-edged sword because and anyone who feels that they are an empath knows that it is a burden to carry the emotions and the needs of others around like they're your own, which really is what empathy boils down to a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It takes a lot of energy. I don't feel like I'm doing it at the time, because it comes so natural, to be empathetic. And I love being empathetic, but there becomes a point in time, that I never recognize before it happens where I am, my energy level, my bank account's over withdrawn, and I'm not able to be empathetic in that space, and then I'm pretty upset.
Yeah, it's kind of this the classic pattern we see in twos in general is exactly what you say, where it's like giving, 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 and then either you've just given too much and you don't have anything left in the tank, or you've given, 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 and it hasn't there's you haven't received any sort of like sign that your giving is either appreciated or making a difference to someone or even noticed or acknowledged in some way. And when either of those two thresholds get tipped, we go almost like instantaneously from helping, helping, helping to resentment and shutdown and frustration.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly it. And it sneaks up on me. I don't want to speak for all twos, but it sneaks up on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, when I get into that space, I really feel like I'm turning into a totally different person. I'm I'm snappy. I'm just angry and frustrated, I guess. And for anybody, we just are irritated, and then we affect those around who surround us. Um,
That's really interesting to hear you describe it as like turning into a different person. Can you say more about that?
yeah, I mean, my natural disposition is to help and want to be there for people and whatnot. And when I get into that space, I go the exact opposite way from that. I'm done giving and I'm done being a helper.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually is a hard emotional place because I feel bad about that, in retrospect. And I've been working hard being okay with that, and not judging my feelings as much
Mm-hmm.
as I normally do.
Yes, it's almost like you're describing like a third step in that pattern. It's like helping, 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 reaching your breaking point and being angry or snappy. And then the third step is judging yourself for having shown up in this way that, like you said, you don't feel like yourself.
Right, right. It
Yeah.
takes a while though to get there. I mean, we're not talking in a day. We're talking like it's
Oh, yeah. I
days and
agree with
days and
that.
days and weeks, and then finally, yeah. And then I get a really, I mean, even though you've seen me do this before, it often is the case. It's not, the word shocking is too strong of a word, but I know it kind of you're like, whoa, that's not normally you.
Yeah. Well, and I'm smiling over here because the capacity of a two to give is really astounding to non-twos. So I think that's a really important point to make. Like, this isn't something that just happens over the course of a day or something like that. Like, you know, you will be just like absolutely selfless for days and days and days on end. And to the story I often tell about, and I want to make sure you're okay with me. Do you know what story I'm about to tell? Is when we were on that trip to Mexico together, and there's someone in our group who had to go back to her room before dinner. You know what I'm
Go
talking
ahead.
about?
I
The
don't remember it very
oh,
well.
okay. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna do it, and if you say no, then we'll edit it out later.
Okay. Sure
This is a
thing, no
little
problem.
peek behind the curtain for everybody. So this was probably like 10 years ago or something. It was like before we moved to Spain. We went on this trip to Mexico. It was like a group, kind of like not couples, because there are a lot of people there that weren't couples. It was just a group retreat that was run by two of the trainers from our gym. So it was like a fitness retreat, and it was at this beautiful resort in Mexico. And there was somebody on the trip who we had never met before, but she was nice and we were making friends and all that good stuff. And that dinner, we all sat down, and she, like, before we even got served our like appetizer, she was like, I just don't feel well. And my back hurts. I'm just gonna go back to my room and lay down. I'm not feeling it for dinner tonight. And you like immediately were like, don't worry, I will take care of it, make sure that you get dinner. And you like got up from your chair, you went over and talked to the server, and you were like, there's somebody in our group that had to go back to her room. I want to make a tray for her. Will you make sure that, you have all the stuff on the tray, blah, 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 blah. And then you came back and sat down and you ate. But as soon as that server came back with the tray, you like stopped your meal and left. You took the tray to her room, which was like, we were into some eco thing. So we were like walking through the jungle to bring this chick her dinner. And then you came back to the dinner table, and everyone at the table is like, wow, your husband is like so nice. And I was like, he is really, really nice. And also he has to do this. Like he is in like the cage of his need to help right now. And even though this person, like, we never saw this person again. Like, I don't even remember her name. She's just a person that we didn't know, but you just wanted to be kind to her. And for me, being married to you already for 10 years at that point, I was like, yep, that's what Mike does. I'm just sitting there eating my soup, like, don't worry, he'll be back, whatever. Everyone else at the table is like, holy cow, your husband is like a saint. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And he missed you saying that, which is a real bummer because that's why you just did this. Do you remember this now that I'm
Now, yeah,
describing it?
I did forget about it, but now, as you say it, I do remember it well.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the reason why I tell that story is, I mean, obviously it's all tongue in cheek, but it is astounding the level that you will go to be helpful and of service, and it kind of indispensable, like a real like lifesaver to the people that are in your life, even people that you don't really even know that well yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, and I a long time ago in college, I remember, yeah, it was college where I was reading books about, that Elie Wiesel was authoring, and the premise behind kind of his life after surviving, the Holocaust was like he wanted to be his brother and sister's keeper, and that really resonated with me being a two. I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, that is my life mission. I just didn't know how to put it in words. And
And I
so,
didn't even have to go through the Holocaust to figure it
right,
out.
exactly. Thank God. And so, while you're talking about this, what makes me think, and it kind of transitions to what's really, really hard, is all that energy we were talking about before, helping and then finally, breaking. Um, it was a realization, especially, after you became such an expert on the Enneagram, it was a hard realization that all that twoism, I call it, um, it felt on the surface from a conscientious standpoint, it was like something good. This made me good. This is I'm helping the world. This is all like so altruistic. But in reality, it is somewhat altruistic, if that is even a a concept. But I do this be, and it's very, it comes from a deep needing subconscious desire to be liked, to be loved, to gain that connection with everybody and anybody. And so I don't know, it kind of like, here I thought, oh, I'm such a great guy. But that was based on a premise of, oh, I'm just doing this for the other person. I'm not, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even think about, I was doing it for me almost more so.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard realization when
Mm-hmm.
you're self-actuating.
I think you're getting at something that's really classic for twos, which is the worst possible thing a two could see in themselves is selfishness. And to be accused of being selfish or to realize that they are selfish or that there's selfish reasons behind the things that we do is, I mean, really, really activating for most twos. And I know that we've had conversations before where to me, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Guess what? You're actually selfish. and and you are just like, what? How dare you say that about me? And I'm like, well, but like, come on, like, just it. Don't you see like this and this? It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just part of who you are. You're like, absolutely not. Basically, go fuck yourself. How dare you say that about me?
And you might as well, since you said that wonderful other story, you might as well confess, the story about the sunglasses.
Okay, that gets to me and you, right? So that's a really great segue. Look at you, you're like a pro. I feel like you're a ringer. I brought you on the show. So that was one of the things I was hoping we would talk about today is, what is the dynamic between a one and a two? So poor Mike, and I would say this is true for almost all couples. Our subconscious is just so smart and also I would say it's kind of like pulling a prank on us all the time, but we are so attracted to people who almost like kind of create the classroom that forces us to learn our lessons. So here's Mike. His like biggest goal in life is to just be this like hero and lifesaver to someone that he loves. And he stupidly marries like someone who cannot stand being saved or helped or rescued at all, which is, self-sufficiency is a huge um it's a huge priority and value for all the types that are in the gut triad. So that's nines, eights, nines, and ones. We all really want to feel like we are in control, we have agency, we are self-reliant. And so it is extremely important to me that, I will ask for help, but I also know that I can do things on my own and I don't need help and I don't want help unless I ask for it and all of these things. And poor Mike, all he wants to do is help me. It's like the best way that he knows to feel close to me. And it's the number one thing that makes me sort of get to the point of like, just, I'm not a child. Stop babying me. And we have so many stories about our marriage where he is just being like the most generous, thoughtful person. And I am like, you know, come at him with my talons out, scratch his eyes out. So the sunglasses story. Actually, you should tell the sunglasses story. I told the Mexico story, so you tell the sunglasses story.
Okay. So it was a warm, sunny day.
Okay, pick up the pace. This is only supposed to be a 30-minute
All
podcast.
right, we were outside. We were on our back porch, and it was quite sunny out. And I noticed that the sun was in my wonderful wife's eyes, and I thought, okay, you know what? I know I'm gonna get her sunglasses so that she doesn't have to squint and struggle in the sun. And so I went and grabbed the sunglasses and gave it to her, and what proceeded to come out of that, just giving her that sunglasses, was her one just coming out with vitriol and spite and malice as to how dare I
Yeah.
bring that to her. She said, I didn't ask you for this. I don't need, like not necessarily need it. I don't, she just bit my head off. Excuse me, bit my head off, but because I did that. You're the one who has a memory like an elephant. What exactly did you say to me? Because it was like,
I think actually at the time I didn't do anything too like overt because your mom was visiting. We were all sitting around the table together. I probably became extremely rude to you. That's what I tend to do when I'm trying not to lose my temper, but I'm really angry. I have zero poker face. And so you'll know instantaneously that I'm mad at you, but I might not say it in that moment. So I think at the time I just was like rolling my eyes and being truly hateful. And then later on, when it was just the two of us, I was like, fucking need you to go get my shit for me. If I want my sunglasses, I know where they are and I can go and get them myself. Or if I want you to help me, I'll ask you to go get my sunglasses. Don't just assume you know what I want. Don't just act like I'm this person that you have to take care of. I'm not a baby, just real. I
I,
mean, and poor Mike, you're just looking at me like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, I'm nice. I'm the good guy here, and you are like losing your ever loving mind over a pair of frickin' sunglasses.
if anybody out there has ever watched the movie White Man Can't Jump, there is a scene with Woody Harrelson when his girlfriend says she's thirsty and he goes up and tries to get her a glass of water and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm getting you a glass of water." And she's like, "I don't want a glass of water. I want you to thirst with me." And I'm like, "Oh my." And he was like, "You're fucking crazy." And so that's sort
Yeah,
of I was like,
exactly.
"Man, you're crazy."
Yeah. I feel like that's just one little aspect of kind of the dynamic between a one and a two, but I do think that's a really classic aspect between a one and a two because ones tend to care a ton about self-reliance and twos care a ton about being a caretaker. And it's a real impossible situation for those dynamics, whether it's, a romantic partnership like Mike and me, or whether it's, maybe even like a coworker that you're working with or a friend or something like that. The way a two not only like helping is the two's way of feeling lovable, feeling loved, expressing love, creating closeness, and to have that taken away from them is like absolute hobbling to them. There's nothing left. How am I supposed to accomplish these things if I can't help you? Would you agree with that, Mike? I don't want to put words into your mouth.
No, I agree with that, pretty much all of it. I'm thinking about it. It's it's hard being with a one because of all the things that you just said. But I also think one of the ways that we work and how I give you a lot of space for being angry and frustrated and expressing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
even when I think you're being crazy, which, uh, you know, it would be really unhealthy for me to tell you you're crazy because obviously criticism is not a great way to go with you. But
Right.
even when I think you're crazy or whatever, I try to be as a good a listener and a sounding board for you as I can. But that once again, that's the helping nature
Mm-hmm.
of a
That's
two,
right.
right?
So here's something in my personal experience about being married to a two that I'd love to have your take on, which is, you know, you wanting closeness and caring so much about closeness and needing closeness in order to feel like safe and loved. And for me being so independent, there's this feeling of, pressure or sometimes like neediness that, there's this person who wants something from me and I just want to be on my own. Or, I mean, we even had, when we had our blowout fight a week ago, one of the things that you said that was so painful and hurtful to hear from me is I just want to be alone. And from my perspective, saying I just want to be alone is something that's like super healthy and normal and understandable and probably like a really maybe evolved way to take care of yourself. But for you, it's like a knife in your heart. And that's it's a really tricky situation. And the other thing for me that I would love to hear your take on is like, because you want to be helpful so much, there is a feeling of almost like a differential or a different dynamic between us, where you are at this level where you have your stuff figured out and you want to help me. And when I step into the role of like, I have my stuff figured out and I want to help you, that doesn't feel good to you. It feels like we sometimes can't be on the same level, because in order for you to feel safe and healthy, you have to be on a different level than me so that you can help me. So when I want to be on the same level, I'm kind of putting you in a position that feels really uncomfortable, because how can you be helpful to me if you're the same, if we're the same, if we're on equal footing, or if you're a mess, even worse, right?
Hmm.
Like, or you're a person who needs help from me, yikes. These are all things that are not, the positioning that feels really solid and stable and safe to a two.
So, Ann, what's your question?
I don't necessarily know it's a question, but more like I'd love to get your take on that. Like, how does it feel for you to be in a position where maybe someone is the savior to you and you are the recipient of help? You are the needy one.
I mean, when I think back, I've always struggled with people helping me and feeling comfortable with it. And I didn't realize until, again, understanding myself way more now than I was when I was younger, that I struggle when I'm in those positions. And
Mm.
I wish I didn't. I mean, when I talked earlier about like it's a blessing and a curse to be a two. I wish I did not feel that way. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, you've told me on several occasions that I'm doing so much that I completely forget that you're even in the room, and that really hurts your feelings. And I'm just so devastated to know that I hurt Anne's feeling. I'm devastated to know if I hurt anybody's feelings for that matter. But Anne, top of the list, that's really, really hard. And so I just go into automatic, like it's overdrive mode,
Yep.
and instead of helping, I'm hurting, especially the person I love the most.
Yeah, but I will say, like, typically it's not painful to me when we're doing that. Like when we go to a dinner party or something like that, instantaneously you are off to the races, being like this amazing, generous of spirit, great listener, incredible conversationalist, thoughtful person to all the strangers in the room. And I'm left to my own devices. But this is where it's a great thing that I'm so self reliant. Like, I don't mind. I want to go and meet other people too. And I don't want to have to tend to you or, need you to tend to me. Like, I'm fine to do that. It's after we get in the car on the way home and we both realize like we just had a date night where we didn't even look at each other the entire night because we spent the entire night interacting with everybody else. It's when I'm maybe not at my best, or I'm frustrated for some other reason or something like that, that sort of like quote unquote abandonment bugs me. But I would say 9 times out of 10, that's really not a big deal to me at all. And I always find it strange when we go to sort of events like that and there's couples that just stay kind of attached at the hip to each other the entire night. Cause I'm like, wow, what would that be like? Like, I'm really glad Mike and I aren't like that.
Well, going back to your original, asking me about my take, um, I always tell my friends that I'm like the wife. I'm the chick in the relationship here, in the sense that I like words of affirmation. It would make my day, my entire day, if Anne were to take a sticky note and say something sweet to me and just leave it somewhere. Um, if she knows that bringing me flowers is something that I like. Now she doesn't do it I don't need it every week or anything like that, but the point is that these little things that show me that she's thinking about me and that she appreciates me, um I desperately need and want from my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I don't get it. And not, I shouldn't say I don't ever get it, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it as much as I would want. And that leaves me feeling hurt and sad and sometimes angry and frustrated. But again, the more I've found out about myself through, really your teachings, honey, and me reading about this, like I'm starting to, I'm not changing. I don't want to be any other type. Not that I could be any other type. I love being a two. It is very fulfilling. I love spreading peace and love. That really is my role on this planet. And but it you know it can be really hard, as I more than alluded to earlier.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's a great segue into, well, actually, there's another point I wanted to make on what you were saying, where like you were saying, like, your example of like kind of going into this two mode and running around the room and not being with me or whatever. Like, I think that, and then also like feeling super uncomfortable when people want to help you or when you're the one who needs help and stuff like that. This is the each type, our egos we have a goal, like we have like a deep spiritual goal that is fulfilling to us. With the two, it's that connection, feeling connected to people. That's the thing you want. And our egos are like these silly little toddlers who have come up with a really childish strategy that they think is going to get us what we want, but actually gets us further away from we want what we want. So the two wants the connection. And the way they think they're going to get their connection is by being super helpful, but by insisting that they are always the helper and they never take from anyone else. They put themselves on a separate plane from all the people they love and make it impossible for them to have that connection that they seek. So it's like this thing, the more that we lean into our egoic pattern, the further and further we get from the thing that pattern is supposedly supposed to be creating for us. Every single type has their own example of that. But that's what I was thinking of when you were talking about, like, oh, I really hate it when people have to help me or whenever I've needed help. And it's like, gosh, that would be something that would create that sensation of connection, like on a whole new level. But you can't let yourself go there sometimes.
Well, two things that makes me think of. One is when I look back in my life and I look at like the instances where people didn't like me or people gave me like, hey, some type of, criticism. I'm just like, oh my God, like I can't believe that person doesn't like me. And sometimes in some instances I try to win them over, but I try to win everybody over. That's if I win them over, then I'm liked and I am loved and I'm connected with them. And that's one thing, that you made me think of. And the other was the well, actually, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but when talking about how you and I work well together, um, it's very easy to take advantage of a two. Like it's super easy. You could ask me to do something every day, all day long, nonstop, but you recognize that because I would just drop, everything to do what you want me to do, you are selective, I guess. You don't abuse my susceptibility to
Mm-hmm.
wanting to help. And I
Yeah. I think that we joke about that sometimes, like, oh, I could make you do anything I want you to, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not that kind of person or whatever.
The other point I wanted to make was it's a lot easier to accept. Like there are exceptions. Like I don't mind, or I feel more comfortable after I've done something for somebody if they reciprocate in
Mm-hmm.
a way. And I, this might go maybe be a little. It's not too intimate, but like I remember when you and I first met, I had at that point in time, I always felt that there was a giver and there was a taker in the relationship. And obviously being the two, I was always the giver. And I never felt as though the relationships I had, and I had a lot of serious relationships. I never felt as though they met me, you know, halfway. And you were the only person who I ever met, fell in love with, and just, gave myself to 110%, that also, met me halfway. And that was one of the things that won me over on you being my life partner in lobster.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're such a cutie patootie. But that does really fit in with the two, right? Like, because what the two, like we were talking about the whole selfishness of the helping, like there's something that the two is trying to get through their help, which is acknowledgement, recognition, ultimately, and a deeper level, that sensation of like, yes, you are loved. You did it. You earned my love. And here it is. And so, finally, if you've been in relationships your whole life with people who really take, they really love the part about being with a two where they just get whatever they want from the two, and the two just makes them, puts them on a pedestal and gives, 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 but they never actually give back. The first time that you're in a relationship with someone who's like, oh, you did that for me, that's so nice, let me do something for you, it's like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for my entire freaking life. Finally, I've been working so hard to earn love and I just got it. Like, I did it finally, and so it's there. The question I wanted to ask, and I think this is a really good segue, is like, how has it helped you to know your type and to know my type?
Um, well, broadly speaking, it helps. I feel as though it helps me relate to you, which, I mean, relating to obviously your partner is huge. There's nonverbal and verbal communication. I because I truly feel like women and men are different species and they talk differently and they hear each other differently. This has helped me hear you when I'm listening, and it has also helped me figure out how to support you, um, and how to relate, truly how to relate to you. I mean, I can't say it, can't emphasize more how, and to understand really how to show up for you as your partner.
Mm-hmm. I love that all of your stuff was about me.
I'm consistent.
I know how to serve you better.
Yeah. And as far as that's you as knowing you're a one.
Oh my
No,
God, you
no,
dork.
knowing me as a two, it helps me kind of be more present with myself and step back a little bit, and also um, conserve my energy. I have a hard time, creating and sticking with boundaries, and that since learning about my type, because I know I struggle with that, I I started being cognizant of that, and I started creating boundaries and sticking with them, and that makes me more healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ultimate tool, right? With the Enneagram is, part of it is self-awareness, like you said, but it also is about helping us raise our consciousness and become not just self-aware, but improve and grow and change, not to become a different type, but to become like the full embodiment of, like what you said, like, I love being a two. This is what I'm meant to do on this planet, is to spread light and love and model empathy for people and all this stuff. And that is the gift of a two, and it's magical. We need twos in this world. And when we do our work and move up that sort of scale of integration, which the Enneagram is such a great tool at helping us do, we can fully embody our gifts and be like, kind of like what our potential is and all that stuff. And since I'm a one, here I am. I'm never shut up about people's potential and growing and changing and improving and being the best you can be and fulfilling your purpose, because that's what a one's all about. But, that's what I see. I would also say, just from the outside observing you, like watching you engage with your Ennea type, I've seen you become more open to the shadow side of your type. It's almost like because you've seen that the Enneagram is legit and you really connect and resonate with your type, learning about the shadow side of the type is something that you accept as just simply a part of it. Like, you believe in the Enneagram, you believe that you're a two. So if a two is kind of selfish, which is a really, really, really hard thing for a two to consider might be true about them. But reading it in a book or hearing it from an Enneagram expert saying like it is a part of a two, you are selfish. And all of a sudden, you're maybe a little bit more open to considering that that might be true because it has been presented in this context of the self of your actual sort of the rubric of your personality. I don't know. How do you resonate with that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It has, again, I'm 52 years old. I'm in this place where I'm doing a lot of work, being introspective and self-actuating, and these tidbits that I'm getting, tell me a lot more about myself. And I would also add, if I were to think what is the thing that plagues a two or me the most is not feeling worthy of being loved. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and this work has helped me recognize that I'm in the I'm loved and I in the present moment I should remind myself that I'm loved and that I don't need to win friends and influence people to get love. It
Mm-hmm.
already exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a really hard thing to, actually integrate. I
Hmm.
think for a lot of people, but even more so for twos. Oh, you guys can't see it in unless you're watching it on the YouTube channel, but my softy, loving, beautiful, vulnerable, heart on his sleeve husband is getting a little teary right now. It's a beautiful thing. So, what would you say for somebody who is thinking about learning about the Enneagram and maybe thinks it might be? Trust me, I talk to people all the time that think it's woo woo nonsense or, just another personality test or whatever. So what would you say to someone who maybe is thinking about giving it a chance?
I would say, I mean, if you want to have, if you're working towards having a better relationship with your partner, with the world around you, this stuff is extremely, um, what's the word? It just teaches you a lot about yourself and about the world around you and the lens that you see through and perceive information. That's probably the best way to like this lens that you're processing information through can be really helped by understanding one's type and your partner's type and just how the universe unfolds for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's about understanding yourself. Like it's your relationship with yourself, and then it expands to your intimate relationships, and then it expands to the world as a whole. And,
Yeah.
it's, that sort of, I think of it almost like concentric rings.
I wish you and I came upon this years ago. I'm not sure if we
Well,
would
we
have been ready.
did
Well, I mean, I'm not years. I'm talking about like a decade and a
decades
half ago.
even sooner than that.
Yeah, the things that we could have sidestepped as far as huge
That's
issues go,
true.
right?
But I
But
think also because I actually have a very distinct memory of when I figured out the Enneagram. It was right when I started working with my current therapist, which is now also Mike's therapist. And she introduced me to the Enneagram. And it was right before literally the night before we were leaving to go on a vacation to Europe. Like the first time we'd ever gone on a vacation and left the kids and all that stuff. We were going, we went to Spain for the first time and then we met up with our friends in France. And the night before we left, I was like, you got to check this out. Nancy told me about it, blah, blah, blah. And we figured out what your type was. We were reading about our types, and both of us kind of like stepped away from the computer and we almost like didn't even talk to each other at first because we were just so gobsmacked by what we were reading. Like I remember reading your type and being like, "Oh my God, this might as well just say like your name is Mike, you have a beard, live in Colorado." It's like so you. And the same thing for me when I read about myself. And of course, when you read about this stuff, you don't just read all the beautiful, wonderful gifts. You read like you struggle with anger. You can be highly judgmental and critical. You're a black and white thinker. You know, I'm like, oh my God, shut up, Enneagram. It was just so it was just I remember reading it and being like, which is a classic thing for a one to think when they hear negative things about themselves, but I just remember thinking like, how could anyone love me? Like it is so true and it is so awful. I can't believe I've managed to trick anyone into marrying me. And I felt sorry for you that you had to be married to me and all of this stuff. But at the same time, I couldn't stop. It was just such a gut punch almost, which anyone listening to this who's like, maybe don't want to do this Enneagram thing. Like, my point is, like, that was a long time ago. That was when Gigi was 2 years old. So that was like 15, 14 years ago. I can say for myself anyway, like I probably spent the first like, I don't know, 10 years that I was studying the Enneagram and learning about the Enneagram, just learning about myself, my own type, and your type. I didn't know any of the other, seven types of the Enneagram really at all. And it was still just like peeling back layers and layers and layers of self discovery and um, confronting stuff about myself. And there was just so much value in that, even though it was all navel gazing for all intents and purposes. I was only really looking at myself and understanding my typology and everything. But even so, like when you were saying, like, gosh, I wish we would have known this stuff so much earlier. I don't think that I learned to be different or show up differently
I mean,
right away from learning that stuff. Like I learned it, but I still was just like grappling with it and puzzling it out. And you know what I mean? Like I don't think we could have done it any faster or sooner than we did. You know what? You know,
yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You got to be ready for it, and I think you have to be in a space that just comes over time where you're
mhm.
ready to really dive into it and get a better understanding of yourself. So,
When I also think like this is something I'm just now learning more about, but like kind of the arc of a human's life, like the development of a human, like especially I was quite young when we got married. I was only 21 when we met. And, you know, a 21-year-old, like when you're in your early 20s, it's not that you don't necessarily have curiosity about yourself or want to be a better person or any of that stuff, but you're still in a period of rapid ego solidification and development. This like sort of dismantling of the ego that starts to happen in your mid 30s, like you literally can't do it sooner. But I hear from people all the time, and I myself have said in the past, gosh, I wish I would have figured this out sooner. I became a mother when I was only 25, and so I hadn't done this work yet. And I think about the damage that I did to my kids because I was in my infancy of self awareness and self growth. But the truth is, like, what I was supposed to start doing this stuff when I was 15 so that by the time I was 25 I was self-actualized enough to be a mother. Like my 50 you're a 15-year-old brain or a 21-year-old brain or a 25-year-old brain, it's just not there yet. Like it I feel like we found this really right when as quickly as we could, as early as we could even open our minds to conceive of it and actually integrate the information.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I remember the feeling I had. You just brought back a whole bunch of memories. I remember the feeling I had when I first read my type, and it was like, oh my God, this is me. And I hadn't gotten that feeling until again until last summer when you had me listen to that podcast with a bunch of
Hmm.
twos, and it was like seven mics that were like sitting around just talking about,
Yeah.
whatever they were talking about. I'm like, oh my God, I feel exactly the same way. I would think the same
Hmm.
way. These people I've never met in my entire life, and they were all saying the same exact things. And if I was in that group, I would have said the same thing. And that, like, I remember it put chills down my spine thinking, this like really gets me, and I really get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain when people have never heard of the Enneagram before. And I always wind up just saying, well, it's kind of like a personality test, but it's so much deeper and so much more comprehensive. When someone starts to actually go into their type and look into it, now we can have a conversation where it's like, oh, this shit is profound.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the benefit, obviously, of you becoming an expert in this, and it has really, really been helpful. I kind of wince when it's described as just a personality test because
Me
it's
too.
so much more. And I'm always excited to hear when you're um, creating like seminars and retreats and whatnot. And I know I've obviously have been in your talks and seminars, and I just find it amazing how you relay this information. And the two in me says, "Oh, you're just you're spreading peace and love and understanding out there," and I love that about you.
Yeah, I'm bringing in. So I feel like we're very lucky because I'm a one with a two wing and you're a two with a one wing, and so that is Mike's doing the chicken dance while I'm describing all that. But it really helps us. I think we have so much in common as well. Like, you know, twos and ones, and the third type that has this trait is are the sixes. We all have this sort of compliant, dependent, or cooperative stance that we take towards things. And so I think that's one of the reasons why no matter how big of a conflict we have or how disparate we are, we do our best to like fight fair and not name call and stick with it and listen to each other and get to the other side because our stance is that toward stance. It's not an aggressive stance. It's not but it's also not a passive or submissive stance either. And so that's a really I think that's a blessing of the two of us in our types. Both twos and ones are self-reliant. Twos are self-reliant because they don't want to need to be helped. They want to be helpful, and ones are self-reliant because we're in the gut triad and we just need to feel like we're in control. But either way, like the fact that we're both so self-reliant has made us, I mean, I think unstoppable in our achieving goals. And I don't necessarily know if I'd describe us as a power couple, but I think we really are um relentless. And when we have a goal, it's not if but when it gets achieved and things like that. I think we're really lucky in that regard.
And I would add, I mean, that's in the face of adversity, because anybody
Mm-hmm.
who has had a life partner or who isn't with a life partner, they know, hey, there are great times and there are not so great times. And I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people the test of a good partnership, a life partnership, isn't how it does when it's doing well. It's how it's doing when it's really, really bad. And
Mm-hmm.
you just talked about, you know, qualities in both of us that have, you know, have pretty much kept us together and having the beautiful family that we have. So when the chips are extremely, down, the stakes are very, very high, those coming together like that is, we are unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Well, honey, I'm so grateful that you were a guest on my podcast and just really bringing it like you always do. You even letting yourself get emotional and vulnerable, and I think it's a big deal. And I hope everyone out there is both excited and ready to dive in with this stuff. I know that we've talked about, how confronting it can be as well. But, that's the beauty of doing this work is that it's anything real is has that sort of that depth to it. And so it's got all of it. It's got the greatness and the challenge and the amazing clarity and direction at the same time that it has the, wow, okay, we've got our work cut out for us kind of feeling and all that good stuff. And if you are feeling intrigued by this or inspired by this, please don't hesitate to click on that link and check out, see if there's still that one spot left for the mini retreat on the 26th. And if there is or isn't, even so, set up your discovery call with me and we'll talk about where we can go with all of this stuff and help you sort of meet yourself for the first time. It's a sensation I talk about when people learn their Enneagram type. A lot of times it's like, oh yeah, there you are. I knew you all along kind of feeling. Um,
Well, let's bookend this with tell the audience again, were you more wrong at that fight?
I would say that I was probably wronger than you. I felt really shitty
Oh,
after
come
the
on.
next day after our fight. I was like, man, was a real bitch yesterday. I'm a real turd burger. I feel like a douchebag. So
I love you with all your douche
you
baggery.
love my
I
douchebaggery.
do.
Okay, I love yours too. Bye everybody. I'll talk to you next week. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.